We're so cool, yeah, yeah. Yeah, we're so cool, cool. We're so cool, yeah, yeah. Fuck you too, cool schmuck. I don't wanna see you guys.
「 around here, you will find some of Sam's Super Nintendo cartridges that she left behind. Obviously, for legal reasons, we couldn't put real games in, and so we conscripted a few of our friends in the industry who are really talented artists to make cool label art for fake Nintendo games that we came up with.
It's so true. The first one was Super Spitfire, and that was by Rachel Morris, who is a cool artist. What is it? The NYU?
The NYU Game Center. She's done a bunch of like posters and other art for them.
And then the next one was Adventurous the Cat Returns, which is it's sort of a.
It's a mascot platformer. Yeah. It's a Bubsy-esque Tood having cat.
Oh yeah, but it's a regular cat. It's not a bald cat.
Yeah, it's a regular cat that rides a motorcycle towards an explosion.
Yeah.
But yeah, Lee Petty is the art director at Double Fine and worked on Brutal Legend, and I think he led up Stacking. And
Which is awesome.
He was nice enough to spend some of his free time making the label for Adventurous the Cat Returns.
Yeah. We ran into him at GDC, and he offered to help us out, and we were all like, cool.
We were like, oh, you didn't think we'd take you up on that offer, did you? Draw us a cat.
Yeah. He regretted the error of his ways. And then the third one is Journey of Crystal, which is sort of a JRPG beast, and that was done by Gen Z.
Yeah.
Okay.
She's the art director at Supergiant. She did pretty all of the art in Bastion, and is working on Transistor. I know we had some people say that they could tell that it was her art because it has such a signature look.
It's pretty distinctive
to how she does things. So it was really cool and really exciting to have these really talented people from other studios that are inspirations to us contribute their unique art to the game. So these are stereoscopic? Yeah, these are stereograms.
Yeah,
that's the
stereogrammatic.
Yeah, stereograms, popularized by the Magic Eye brand of images from the 80s and 90s. These really work. Like if you cross your eyes and you can do a Magic Eye image, you can see what's in these. Spoilers. They are.
Well, as I recall, there's a cool shark.
And?
I don't remember what the other one is.
Carla!
What?
It's a big heart.
Okay, it's hard for me to do those things.
And that's true for a lot of people. So the two instances of people not being able to see those images are they just can't do them, which a lot of people just can't do them, or they were born in the late 90s or after the 90s and played our game and didn't know what the hell these things were.
Yeah, they're like, what is this weird static shit? Yeah,
well, I thought it was like we got some messages that were like, I thought it was just a weird drawing.
So good.
So, yes, as you get older, you can't hear really high-pitched sounds anymore, and you know what Magic Eyes are still.
It's the circle of life.
mom and dad are much more actively religious. You know, there's a Bible in the foyer, and there's a Bible in Dad's bedside table.
Well, or arguably they want to appear actively religious. But yes.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, my intent was that they aren't super religious, but they probably still go to church.
And they also they would feel bad if they put their Bibles away. They'd be like, oh, we need those to be out for us to look at, to consult in case we need them, or something.
But it's definitely, you know, I don't know, it comes from my own experience of my parents went to church and were more religious and stuff, and as, I don't know, around when I was like 10 or 12 or something, I was just sort of like, I remember having a conscious realization of just, none of this makes any sense. like I was like, this is all about a guy who was dead and then came back from the dead. That doesn't happen. Magic isn't real.
Wow.
And then there was a process of like just being like, okay, well, I'm just not going to go to church. I also remember having a conscious realization that the only reason I wanted to go to church was because after the service they gave you free donuts.
Oh yeah, no, that's fine.
And so I don't know. It's probably just partially me projecting and trying to show that Sam is re-examining her own values as she gets older and grows out of childhood and doesn't necessarily share the same beliefs that her parents do.
I never tried really hard to, like, I don't know, actually, yeah, I don't know, it was normal church behavior, like, I would go and, like, help out with, you know, my younger siblings, and, like, my parents always went to church and whatever, and I'd go along, and there was, like, a couple of people that I knew there and everything, but it took me until I was about, I think I was, like, 13 or 14, I spent a significant amount of time really trying to, like, to be like, alright, I'm gonna do this church thing, I'm gonna try really hard, and I would, like, get annoyed at people when they said, oh my god, and stuff, because I thought that was what you were supposed to do, and I think it was, I don't know, lasted, like, whatever, 6 or 8 months or something, and then it broke, and I couldn't do it anymore, and I forget what I did something, I ruined something, in the church through total, not caring. I built I remember now, I built a house of cards out of a Bible trivia
like flashcard
set.
Yeah.
Well, it was just like Trivial Pursuit, except it was Bible based. And I built like this big house of cards, and at one point I remember thinking, alright, you know what, fuck it, and I glued the cards into place. So I had this big house of cards that was glued together, totally like ruining all the goddamn cards. And at that point, I stopped having to go to church so much.
One of the assets that I really liked creating in the game was board games. So there's 3 in total of them throughout the house. Ideally there'd be more, but we had to focus on the getting the walls built and things like that. But I really like them. They're just a simple extruded cube. There's something about environment design that's really fun. There's really a goofy aspect of it where you have to create fake brand names, you have to create fake toys and fake storefronts. Maybe my favorite is in the game Costume Quest, when you're going through the shopping mall, there's a store called Why Not Flip Flops, which always makes me really happy. But this one is a parody of Dream Phone, which is an awful game that came out in the early 90s, where you sit around a table with your girlfriends and you pick up this plastic pink phone and call these sexy boys, and you see which one likes you. It doesn't really suit Sam's personality exactly. I figure maybe it was given to her by a well-intentioned relative who doesn't quite have her personality down. And maybe she played it once on a lark and then put it in the closet, and that's where it stays.
I was one of the hosts of the Idle Thumbs video game podcast for a year or two, and I go on there, and every once in a while those guys are my friends. And I didn't want to put Idle Thumbs references all over the game, but I did want to have Idle Thumbs references in the game, so we localized them entirely to this one piece of paper. So almost everything on here is an Idle Thumbs reference, and specifically to a weird exchange that we had about Will Wright's GDC talk in like 2008 where he didn't want everybody to show up and crowd the place, so he gave his speaker name as Phaedrus, and then did a talk about a bunch of crazy stuff, including the idea of rocket mail, which was going to be like done by it was pitched by the U.S. Postal Service in the 50s and stuff. So, and then the thing on the podcast was about how Phaedrus had a little brother, and so anyway, whatever. The brother, of course, it's a Phaedrus, and you can't hardly see the icon in the back because it's obscured, but there's this 50s rocket icon in the back that's like the logo of Phaedrus Motors, and then also it's the reference that Will Wright was making, and that is a secondary reference here because it's a motorcycle thing, is that in Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, the book, the author is having kind of an ongoing exchange with this character of from Greek history called Phaedrus and motorcycles and blah blah blah. So it's a big knot of obnoxious references to lots of different stupid things.
Lonnie came over today, but everything was different. She was sitting at my desk chair, and she wouldn't look at me. Finally, I asked her what was going on. She said she felt like she'd done something wrong that night in the city. Like I must think... But I said no, there was nothing wrong. I just wanted to say... But I couldn't find the words. I felt like I was gonna cry, but I wasn't sad. She got up and sat next to me on the bed. I looked at her. Lonnie, do you think you could ever... And that's when she kissed me.
Yeah, I ended up being pretty happy with this. This is the only picture of Lonnie that we had for a really long time, and I was really glad to actually come up with something that we liked, since this kind of thing is really hard, especially when it is such a major character. The other thing is Lonnie has a cross necklace. She also has some Catholicism in her family.
Yeah, and I think that's something that I don't think that particular detail has been called out by anybody. People notice, like, the Bibles and whatnot. But yeah, I intended for Lonnie, like, I thought it would be interesting if she came from a more conservative family than Sam's, in that she actually wears a cross necklace and carries some, Catholicism with her, and her dad was an army guy, and, her background is even in some ways maybe kind of more stifling than Sam's, and that's probably why she's a more, like, openly rebellious person on the outside. Barf Burger is enjoyed by all. So the thing is, I drew the Barf Burger because I drew all of Lonnie's drawings. So I drew the two cats on the motorcycle and the Captain Allegra drawings and stuff like that. And that was really I think that it goes hand in hand with, I did Lonnie's handwriting in the game, and Carla did Sam's handwriting. And that was partly because the two of us were going to be working the most closely on this stuff, and so being able to just quickly, like, rewrite a note that we wanted to change and scan it and update the game and not have to, like, email somebody to say, oh, could you write that again or whatever, was really useful. And also we both just happen to have sloppy teenager handwriting that looks believably 17 years old. Also, I have a believably 17-year-old level of drawing skill, so that worked too.
Lonnie brought her hair dye over today. She said, I need to fix these roots. Think you could help? Dyeing hair is weirdly intimate. I don't know if I've touched someone else's scalp before. It's pretty intimate, right? It felt intimate. We looked in the mirror together after, and I expected her to say something about how it looked crappy or good or whatever. But that's when she said, you're so beautiful. And she was looking at me. Right in that moment, I wanted to say something, but I waited. And the moment was gone.
Barf Burger is enjoyed by all. So the thing is, I drew the Barf Burger because I drew all of Lonnie's drawings. So I drew the two cats on the motorcycle and the Captain Allegra drawings and stuff like that. And that was really I think that it goes hand in hand with, I did Lonnie's handwriting in the game, and Carla did Sam's handwriting. And that was partly because the two of us were going to be working the most closely on this stuff, and so being able to just quickly, like, rewrite a note that we wanted to change and scan it and update the game and not have to, like, email somebody to say, oh, could you write that again or whatever, was really useful. And also we both just happen to have sloppy teenager handwriting that looks believably 17 years old. Also, I have a believably 17-year-old level of drawing skill, so that worked too. But it was fun because basically the notes were created in real life in essentially the same way they were in the fiction, where I would write my part of the note and then hand the piece of paper to Carla and she would write her part of the note, and we just constructed it that way.
Well, I mean, one of the most comforting things in the world to me is having somebody, like, brush my hair or stroke my head. Like, my mom, when I wasn't feeling well, I could lie down in her lap, she would just brush my hair. And it would always make me feel better. Like, the weirdest way, I couldn't figure out why, but it just seemed like this friendly connection to somebody that it is, like she says, it is strangely intimate in a way that I'd not really, I guess, put into words until reading that part of the script. Where that's what I was thinking of, was like that connection, that sort of human touch, that it's something so friendly and so loving that you can do. And that whole idea of like touching someone's scalp being so intimate, it just made me think of that. Just those wonderful little moments where just a touch can be so much more.
The boxes of tampons that you can find in the washrooms around the house, they weren't originally on the list of items that needed to be modeled, but when you're creating a bathroom at that level of fidelity, and when you're creating a bathroom for a teenage girl, no less, the idea of not having something like that is kind of jarring. It was kind of jarring to me, especially because when you're at that age, your period is something that kind of really defines your mood at any given day, and maybe what you wear and where you go. So, I just thought it was, something necessary for visual storytelling, especially of a girl going through what she's going through.
A lot of Gone Home is about pointless interactivity that is sort of things being interactive for the sake of them being interactive, but it really comes from our inspirations of immersive sims like System Shock and Bioshock and Thief, where a big part of the design philosophy behind those games and Gone Home is that the world needs to be really internally consistent, and there's this feeling that if there's something that your character might do, you should be able to do it in the game. So in Bioshock, for instance, you can flush all the toilets and you can turn on all of the faucets, and that's also true in like Deus Ex and Dishonored. And sometimes the water fountains in Deus Ex give you like 1 health or whatever, but really you can interact with them because there's this expectation of, if you could interact with that, if you encountered it in this world, we should let you do that, right? So, all of the faucets in our game can be turned on, and they can be turned on so that you can turn them on, and you can flush all of the toilets, and it extends into our philosophy behind you can pick up every plastic cup and toothbrush and Kleenex box, not because it's going to add a whole lot to your understanding of this world to be able to look at the underside of a cup, but to pay off that expectation and say to the player, yeah, you could pick that up and look at it, so we're going to let you do that, and it's going to be consistent interactively with the stuff that is important, and that makes it your job to look at everything and give it your attention, and for you to decide and understand and figure out what has significance and what doesn't, and not for us to tell that to you. Almost none of the events, the little events in the game, are scripted as far as like triggering when you do something specific. So all of the thunder and lightning and the creaky noises in the house, they're all just randomized on timers. The only like scripted thing is in the secret passageway. When you look at the crucifix, there's scripting that detects that you did that, and then it causes the light to pop, which is my one indulgence of like messing with the player. But we've had a lot of people play the game and say, oh, the way you scripted it so that right when I walked into the TV room there was that big thunder and lightning strike, like that was really spooky, or I walked through that one door and then you played that sound behind me, and it's like it's awesome that the combination of all the different kind of like significant actions you can do in the game, right, like crossing into a new room or opening a door or this, that, or the other thing, and the randomization of stuff can make it seem like the random elements have extra significance to them, but in fact it's like you just got lucky, basically.
Yeah, it's total apophenia, because, like, yeah, it's just... because there's enough random things going on, and you can do enough things that eventually some of them are going to line up, which is, cool.
The music for Gone Home was mainly composed over 2 separate periods, roughly a year apart. A version of Part 1 of the game had to be ready by October 2012 for submission to the 2013 Independent Games Festival, so I did all the Part 1 audio logs primarily that September. The following summer I did another round of logs for the second half of the game, as well as some Part 1 revisions in the ambient exploration tracks. One really nice side effect of the long gap between composition sessions, as well as the structure of writing music that is very literally accompanying a story, was that I ended up hitting on pretty different ideas and approaches over time as I got further along in Sam's story. The original sketches I did had mainly electric piano sounds, which are warmer and more naturalistic than synthesizers and other electronics instruments. As Sam and Lonnie's story developed more, though, I started to bring in acoustic guitar as well. It seemed like an appropriate way for the music to build up some more familiar, natural elements, somewhat echoing Sam coming into her own. Eventually, it became a really tonal element of the score. After that emerged, I started to more carefully control the instrumentation for the various main categories of log subject matter, including Sam's self-reflections, Sam and Lonnie, Sam and her parents, and even Sam and Daniel. Some of those have their own melodies and themes as well. That wasn't really a grand plan from the start, and I don't expect everyone to really notice it, but it became one of my favorite things about working on this score.
Sometimes you just have to lie to Mom and Dad. Like when Lonnie asked me to see a band with her and stay over at her friend's place in the city after. That's a lie to Mom and Dad situation. But it was so worth it. The girls on stage were just so loud and real and awesome. And everybody was moving together like one huge tide of sound. Between 2 songs, Lonnie leaned over and said, "How do you like your first show?" I was so happy. I felt tears starting in my eyes. And then she up and hugged me. I think she could tell.
really enjoyed playing Gone Home. I have to say it was pretty exciting to find the Heavens to Betsy tape, because that was really, those songs really did come out on a cassette tape at the time, and that really was how people discovered the music was getting a cassette tape passed around. So getting to put it in the actual tape player and play it and listen to our song, it definitely gave me chills. It was like, wow, how exciting for a young person today to get that moment of discovery and to listen to our music. I think it's great. Fanzines. That's one of the things that we started doing right away, was doing these Riot Girl fanzines, and everyone would contribute and write, an article for it, and then we'd compile it and make these Riot Girl fanzines, and we would mail them out to people. All this is so funny to talk about it before the internet, but we used the mail, and people would write. We had a P.O. box, and we started getting letters, because people would read in someone else's fanzine, there's this Riot Girl thing that started happening, right? And it just, it was the most incredible thing. It just snowballed. Girls wanted to be a part of it immediately across the country, right? So for the time we started Heavens to Betsy in 1991, I think it was only a year later, right? So 1 year of Riot Girl meetings and these letters happening and these fanzines happening. Well, a year later, we left on the Riot Girl tour, the Heavens to Betsy Bratmobile Riot Girl tour, from Olympia to D.C. Well, for some reason, it took us almost 5 weeks to get there on this tour. And we ended up staying in D.C. another something like 5 weeks before the Riot Girl convention that happened. So all of this, all of these fanzines, all these girls across the country started getting interested in Riot Girl, and the press just went bananas. I mean, the press attention was off the hook. New York Times, USA Today, all these journalists wanted information and wanted to interview all of us. And it was crazy. So by the time we got to the Riot Girl convention, suddenly we were truly part of a movement.
I don't get Lonnie sometimes. Like, her band, and our zine, and her hair, and everything are all anti-authority. But I watch her in JROTC, and she's doing drills in perfect formation, following orders, no question. And there's all this stuff in the news about don't ask, don't tell. Like, she's going to join the army and then have to lie? About who she is? She said they don't need to know what they don't need to know. Like it was no big deal. This from the girl who trashed her locker to, like, defend my honor. I've learned when to stop arguing, though. I don't think Lonnie even gets Lonnie sometimes.
So earlier in an earlier version of the story in Gone Home, Sam and Lonnie got caught together, and Lonnie's dad was like an asshole about it and threatened to send Lonnie to live with her mom in Florida. And we cut that. It was too melodramatic, and it wasn't really interesting. It was an external force that was acting on them, which I wasn't super excited about in practice, and so on and so forth. But it caused there to be this concept of Lonnie's mom living in Florida, which...
Florida is, of course, the worst place that you can live.
Well, let's not assume... But that said, it's the other side of the country, and it's totally so foreign from Oregon and everything. Also, it's where I grew up.
Yeah, that was.
So yes, the reason I think that Lonnie's mom lives in Florida is that I grew up in Florida, and I moved from Florida to Oregon when I was 19, and I've been back to visit, but if someone were to say to me, "Hey Steve, do you want to go back and live in Florida?" I would take a sheet of notebook paper and I would write "no" on it, as big as you can get, and hand it back to you. There would be knives, there would be gravestones, there would be
dead
lightning,
face.
Big X's in the eyes, vampire teeth for some reason.
I was largely unfamiliar with Florida, and my family started going there every once in a while, or when I was in high school for Christmas, because my mom hates being cold. And
but
anyway, the only thing that I remember basically is that everybody had lawn flamingos, and we went around Christmas, so I remember hearing on the radio multiple times dogs barking Christmas carols. That's Florida.
Florida sounds cooler than I remember it being.
In my head, that's Florida, right there.
All of the sliding doors that you see in the game are actually, from a code perspective, drawers. When I made a thing that could slide along a track like that, for the purpose of making drawers, Steve took it and, as designers are wont to do, used it for his own purposes and came up with sliding doors in our game.
Writing Sam was a unique challenge, just in the sense of, on the one hand, it was very much from my personal experience because it's about being a teenager and my memories from that time, as an individual, but also who Sam was and what her experience was. Came about as a result of kind of problem solving that we were doing, that Carla and I were doing, just figuring out what the story and what the conflict in the story was going to be. So, by the time we figured out this was all going to take place in one house, and the conflict was going to be between the members of this family, and it had to be kind of irreconcilable differences that would cause serious drama between the members of this family, we started thinking, what form could that take? Could it be that the teenager of the family falls in love with somebody that they're not supposed to and the parents don't agree? And what is the contemporary version of that? And so, we at some point decided that we were going to write Sam as a gay character who had fallen in love with another girl, and what conflict would that cause within the family, right?
And we were excited about that opportunity just because of the paucity of that kind of, narrative in games. And I remember when we came up with that concept, just being like, oh man, this is going to be good. We actually get to do this, which is really cool. But anyway, we actually, we had to do a lot of work to make it plausible.
Right. Well, because the other side of it is that, I'm the writer on the game, and on the one hand, a lot of teenage experience is universal. But I also, at some point, just had that very clear realization of, okay, I have just signed up for writing a gay teenage girl. Two out of the 3 aspects of that character are not something that I've actually lived through. And so it was impressed upon me, especially like when I was working at Irrational, how important research was to getting your fiction right. Whether it's, very practical terms like how something works mechanically to what the characterization of the individuals in your story might be. And so, my process was reading a lot of blogs about people's actual experiences growing up, being gay and being female, and reading fiction and nonfiction about people's experience, and doing original interviews with people that I knew in my life, and asking them about what they remember about growing up with these experiences, and being able to actually, ask follow-up questions. And I'm really grateful to all the people who have shared their experiences through writing and who were willing to share their experiences with me, personally, talking to me into a microphone so that I could refer to it later, which is just a huge leap for someone to take, to talk about their own, coming of age and all of those very personal experiences. But, I couldn't have gone into writing this character with just saying, well, I'll just assume that I'll do an okay job and write it however it seems like I should, and instead saying, you have to take this seriously, and you have to actually reach out to people who have lived it, so that when you're writing this character, it represents the experience of people like her in a way that is plausible and respectful and
authentic.
Yeah, that represents them in a way that doesn't cheapen the experience that they've had by relying on cliches or just kind of your expectations as an outsider.
I had an interesting talk with Mom and Dad tonight. One you were never gonna need to have. I mean, you've known, right? I've known. I've known since, like, She-Ra. Mom and Dad didn't, I guess. But they saw the zine and the stuff on the locker, and they were like, is there something we should know about you and Lonnie? And so here's the thing. I was prepared for them to be mad, or disappointed, or start crying, or something. But they were just in denial. You're too young to know what you want. You and Lonnie are just good friends. You just haven't met the right boy. It's a phase. That's what I didn't see coming. That they wouldn't even respect me enough to believe me. Well, joke's on them, 'cause they're in for one very long phase.
You know, it's really about the ideals that we were trying to get across in our music. You know, I think that the move to equality for women and for everyone in the U.S. is something that we all want to be a part of, right? And we used Riot Grrrl and we used music as the tool for that, you know. And that, but it's really, to me, it's about equality for everyone. That I think is the key, and that's why young people really feel passionate, and they listen to the music and they hear that passion, and that's what they connect with.
I'd already played through the first full half of Gone Home before I started composing any music, which was really important to understand how the game felt and played and looked. But I didn't get a build of the complete game until I'd already been delivered the Part 2 audio logs, and then ended up not playing any of the second half of the game until it was fully complete and I'd written all the music. This wasn't originally my intention, but it meant I ended up fully immersed in Sam's story, essentially to the exclusion of all the other subplots of the game, which are not accompanied by specific music. I don't know if that was objectively the right call or not as the composer, but it definitely made me feel very connected to that character. I probably heard Sarah delivering Sam's story dozens or maybe hundreds of times over. It also meant I didn't actually know the literal implications of the ending of Sam's story, so I was imagining all kinds of potential endings that ended up being a lot darker than what you see when you finally do reach the attic. So as a player, when I did complete the game, I was pretty relieved.
Really early on, I thought it would be, like, something that I thought would be engaging about Gone Home would just be finding notes and scraps in unexpected places and being able to, like, you know, zoom in really far and find something that's tucked away in someone's pocket or whatever. And yeah, finding a note that was in someone's pocket that had gone through the dryer, I thought would just be a cool image. And so we were always going to do this, and we ended up making it this specific note from Lonnie to Sam, which it wasn't this for a long time. It was the one that's in the garbage can in the garage was here for a long time, and this one didn't exist, and there was no note in the garbage can in the garage. But yeah, I think that this note, this is I think the last note that went into the game.
It was really late.
And like the last new content, you know, that went into the game, because we did our final like pre-release playtest, and there were people that were kind of like, I felt like Lonnie's decision came out of nowhere at the end. And you know, I was like, why, you know, why is that? And I think it's because Lonnie had never gotten to say her piece, you know, right. and never gotten to have that moment of saying, I wish things were different and I want to be with you and I don't want to have to go away. But we've just made the assumption that that's how it's got to be. To give you some context for her, when she actually had to confront it, saying like, you know what, I can't live with it being that way. And so this was her chance to speak just from her own perspective about why she felt like she had no choice in the matter. And then what she was deciding against when she, you know, changed her mind when she finally had to like ship out.